Hoops Heaven proudly brings to you Basketball Hustle, featuring your host, the writer, Chris Pike, and the scoring machine, Shawn Redhage. Now it's time for another episode of Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle.
Welcome everyone to the second episode of Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle. We've made it through our first show. We hope you enjoyed it if you managed to tune in. And I'm Chris Pike, your co-host, and I'm here with the man of the moment, the man that you're all here to listen to, I'm sure, Shawn Redhage. Thanks for joining us again.
Thanks, I'm excited. Episode 2 upon us and a lot to talk about. Let's get into it.
Absolutely. It was a fantastic round one of NBL basketball, and obviously we saw a thriller in Perth with the Wildcats doing what the Wildcats do and finding a way to win in the grand final rematch. And, you know, we saw the Brisbane Bullets look pretty impressive when they had a win as well. The South East Melbourne Magic, that's going to happen a lot. The Phoenix obviously got off to a winning start as well, and the Sydney Kings got the job done against the Cairns Taipans. But first of all, our show here, Shawn, this is our second episode. What was the feedback you got on the first show, and how do you think we went?
Yeah, no, I think, we had some fantastic guests, Dylan Boucher, Damian Martin, two legends of the NBL, and I'm excited about the guests that we have today as well. And it's a great way to reach a medium to reach our new fans, and I'm looking forward to continuing to bring some great interviews and some great insight to the NBL and basketball. Well,
let's not let our listeners wait too long. The guest for today, really excited to have a chat to it'll be the three men that we end up talking to once we get the 2-minute drill involved as well. But first of all, Ben Madgen, new to the South East Melbourne Phoenix this year, back to the NBL after a pretty long career at the Sydney Kings. You spent a lot of time playing against him when he was at the Kings. You had a lot of success against him as well. What are your thoughts on Ben and what we can have a chat to him about?
Well, I'm excited to see, his growth in his career, and obviously he did tremendously well in the NBL when took his trade over to the Europe and now back to the NBL. So just kind of finding out more about his decision making there. But, Ben's one of those guys that can just flat out score and just knows how to get the ball in the hole. And I think he's going to be a huge key piece to South East Melbourne Phoenix success this year.
And then our second guest, Drake Yu, a guy that you played in a championship with the Perth Wildcats, and he's gone on to some big things already since his playing career. He's now working at the Stockton Kings, the assistant general manager there, the G League franchise of the Sacramento Kings, and he's been working at the Sacramento Kings, and he's been doing a lot of scouting work. He's been watching LaMelo Ball and RJ Hampton pretty closely. He's going to have a lot of interesting insights to give to us.
He is. He's going to have it is going to be interesting to see his, obviously a player in the NBL. Now he's on the other side, scouting the NBL and in the NBA and the G League over there as well. So he's got a unique perspective on things. So I think it'll be great to catch up with him and see what he's learned and where he sees the NBL and especially LaMelo Ball as well. I'm excited about that one.
To me, one of the exciting parts of doing this show with you is the chance for you to reconnect with people from your playing career, whether it was guys that you played with and against, like Dylan Boucher last week, or you shared a championship with 5 years ago with Drake Yu. But otherwise, you might not always get the chance to catch up with these guys. So this is a chance for you to probably connect with people that otherwise you might not always get to.
It's a good point. You get busy with your own lives, and everyone's off to their own thing. So it's I'm excited about both these players as well. They're fantastic players and people as well. So it's a great way to reconnect in that regards.
Now, of course, we wouldn't be here, Shawn, without the support of Hoops Heaven. The minute we started this show, they were very quick to jump on board. Fantastic supporters. We'll have a bit more of a chat about them in a minute, but for Jason and the team at Hoops Heaven, hoopsheaven.com.au, we wouldn't be here without them, and thank you again to their support. And our first show, we got some great feedback from it, and for anybody listening and wondering where you can have a listen, we've made it available as many places as possible. If you go to iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, YouTube, MyTuner Radio, we've tried to make it available pretty much everywhere you can find a podcast. We want you to be able to find this show because we want you to be able to tune in and have a listen to us. And another exciting announcement that we can make this week is that from this week onwards, we'll be available on 91.3 Sport FM here in Perth, and through sportfm.com.au you'll be able to listen to us live through that as well. So great to have another partner on board.
Yeah, Sport FM getting on board. I actually spoke to them earlier in the week, gave my thoughts about the NBL round. So tune into them and you get everything sport that you need. So great to have them on board.
Let's get into the action, Shawn. Round one of the NBL. Let's just hit the biggest talking point on the head first of all. Not always great when it's not the action on the court that becomes the biggest talking point of your game, but it's hard to avoid the fact that a lot of people were talking about the TV coverage and the decision to broadcast the games from a hub in Melbourne now instead of having the commentators on the floor at games. Obviously, it got some mixed feedback, and all of our listeners will have their own thoughts on what they thought. But from your point of view, you're the man on the ground in Perth still. You're still involved in the coverage, and you're the man that's providing the updates from Perth back to the commentators in Melbourne. Can you just talk us through how it worked and what it involves from your point of view? Because everyone will have their opinions on what they think of the idea, but you're one of the very few people who can actually tell us how it works.
Yeah, well, I think it's a little bit different this year. They're obviously going to have the games out of Melbourne in the hub. It's something to where I think that they'll be able to streamline everything and have the producers and everything there in Melbourne. And, from my point of view, it makes my role a little bit different, more of a sideline role. So I was able to go into the huddles a little bit more and see it from that point of view. And then there's some teething issues. That's always going to be when you're changing the way you're doing broadcast. But I thought from game 1 to game 4, there was a much better improvement. And hopefully they'll continue to make some strides this week. But it's, it's a decision that they've made. And I think that hopefully, the fans are still going to have a great experience watching the NBL because the product out there is fantastic.
I think you make a good point. I don't think too many people were that upset by what they saw by Sunday afternoon. I think a lot of the clinks from Friday night and Thursday night were ironed out. It might not be ideal, but I think in the long term, for the benefits that the league sees in doing it this way, I think there's merit to it. From your point of view, what's it like to get to go and see some opposition huddles? You probably haven't done that a lot during your career, and when you have been broadcasting over the last 12 or 18 months, you've been sitting at the commentary desk. What was it like to actually go and have a look at some huddles?
Well, it kind of felt like I was a player again, being back in there, seeing Trevor or Dean Vickerman draw up a play, and then be able to get to see that when they go back out on the court and did they execute. And there was a few times where it looked like the guys were a little confused in the huddle, and then they went out and they didn't even execute the play. So it's just kind of seeing those inside is fun from my point of view, and hopefully it's a little bit different experience. You probably don't have as big a role in the coverage, but it's still fun to be sitting courtside and being able to witness a game that happened on Saturday afternoon in Perth. That was fantastic.
Absolutely. Before we get to that, Thursday night in Melbourne, great to have a Melbourne throwdown. A Melbourne rivalry is always great for the NBL, and over history it always has been. What did you make of the game? The South East Melbourne Phoenix got the win. It was a thriller. Mitch Creek was fantastic. Obviously, Chris Golding got hurt, but he was great as well. So was Sean Long. Mallow Trimble, a bit of an interesting debut with 7 turnovers in the first half. What did you come away thinking about that season opener?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I predicted South East Melbourne Phoenix would win. I just thought the emotion of the first two I've seen it when a few teams have come into the league, Gold Coast being one of them, the Blaze getting their first win as well. So I just kind of felt like the emotion would really help them, and it did. They came out, they played fantastic, and they deserved to win that game. Melbourne came in and got back into it, but probably just weren't polished and still trying to work out how they get Mello and Sean Long into it. But Sean Long, if they can use him in the right way, he can be the MVP of this league. That's what I took away from that first round. But one, he's got to stay out of foul trouble, and two, they've got to get him the basketball. When they got him the basketball, it was a bucket every time.
Yep, absolutely. Friday night up in Cairns, it seemed like we were watching a game from the Taipans last season, where for 3.5 quarters they were really competitive. They were in control of the game for a lot of it. They were 8 points up early in the last quarter, but they just couldn't finish the job done. Is it an ongoing problem for Mike Kelly and the Taipans, or did they come up against a very good opposition in the Sydney Kings?
I think they're just going to have to figure out who their go-to guys are down the stretch. And that's something that you do when you get so many new guys. You're not really sure. Obviously, they played great for 35 minutes, but who are you going to get the basketball to in those final 5 minutes? Is Machado going to be the one? We'll have to see how that plays out, but that's something that they're going to have to figure out pretty quickly. I think Mike Kelly can be happy with the effort that his team put in, but they're going to have to find a way to get a closer to be able to win some basketball games early on. They don't want to go down too many games. It's just this competition's too tough to get back into the hunt of things.
Absolutely. Saturday afternoon in Perth, it was the grand final rematch. Obviously, Melbourne arrived without Casey Prather and David Barlow, and then they lost Chris Goulding just before tip-off as well. So the job was ahead of them, but like we talked about last week, the problem for Melbourne is going to be that there's only one basketball when they've got all their stars on the court. I felt that the fact that Mello Trimble and Mitch McCarron especially could have more time with the ball in their hands, it made them play better because they could do their thing, and I thought it helped them. I thought Shawn Long didn't have a great day, but then Alex Pledger did instead. He stepped up and one of their rookies, Joe Llewellyn-Aquil, he was very exciting, but they didn't get the win. Tariko White steps up with 14 points in the last quarter, hits the game winner, and familiar story where a team can come into Perth and play well, but the Wildcats just know how to win.
They do. There was if Melbourne United, you take a lot of positives out of that. Obviously, they're sitting 0-2, so not too many positives after the first week. I felt like they deserved. I think the Wildcats probably thought that Melbourne United deserved that, but credit to the Wildcats. They played with the heart, and that we've seen them in the past just really lift up their intensity in that second half. I thought they got into that press because Melbourne United was playing so big. It was something they could use, that little pressure and going a little bit of small ball, even Nick Kay at the 5 at times with Hunt in foul trouble. But I guess the question mark for me with the Wildcats is just the size. Can they match up with the size of a Shawn Long, Andrew Bogut, some of these big centers that can really dominate down there in the paint? I'm not sure that Hunt and Majok are going to be able to do that for 40 minutes on a nightly basis. So it's going to have to, they manufactured a win, I thought, through their pressure, but they're going to have to try and find some ways to see if they can get a little bit more productivity out of their big men, I think.
Absolutely. But speaking of big men for the Wildcats, Nick Kay, he's been fantastic ever since he's been in the league, but his experience with the Boomers over this off-season and playing at the World Cup, he just looks like a totally different player right now, and he was already at a very high standard. He looks stronger, he looks more confident, his game's better at both ends of the floor. He has every reason to think that he could win the MVP of this league right now.
Yeah, that's a big call. I think he's got a guy on his team named Bryce Cotton that might take a few votes away from him, but I think he's the best power forward in the league and just does it from a variety of different reasons. I think any coach would be happy to have Nick Kay on their team.
What about for Melbourne now? They go 0-2. They've got some injuries, and now they head across to the United States to play two NBA opponents. Is that horrible timing for them? How do you feel that is for a start of the season?
Well, I was telling someone this week, I just kind of feel like the NBL needs to, if they're going to do the NBA games, which I think is great, and the exposure, had 100 scouts just watching the New Zealand Breakers and RJ Hampton just train the other day. So it's fantastic. 1 million people watching. I just would like to see them move the season back a week. Let those teams go over, play NBA, then come back and let's start the NBL after they've played. Because the NBA is not going to change when they play their games. So let's start the NBL a week later. Let's get every team go over there, play an NBA game, get that experience. It's fantastic for the league, the players, everything about it is a positive. And then it gives everyone on an even playing field. Now you got Melbourne United's going to go over there, play 2 games, fly back on a Saturday, and then have to play the champs and the Wildcats on Sunday at home. So it's a tough stretch for them. Not only that, they're down 3 stars at the moment. So it's it's an interesting one. They could be sitting here 0-3, and many predict as the favorites. Yeah.
I think you make a good point. I see no reason why we couldn't start the season a week or 2 later and have all 10 of our NBL clubs go over there, because right now the Cairns Taipans and Illawarra Hawks, you would think, are never going to get that chance in the current format, because the bigger franchises are going to get that chance, and Obviously, the Wildcats chose not to do it this year, but if it doesn't interrupt their preparation to a season, you would think the Wildcats would jump at that chance because there's so many benefits to it as long as it doesn't interrupt your actual NBL season. So maybe it's something, instead of some of the talk that's going around right now about dumping it all together, maybe we expand it next season and instead have every club go over there and every club can have a week there, and then we start the season once everyone gets back.
Well, and maybe even have the preseason blitz over there. I mean, 27 scouts from the U.S. came over here just to watch, so why not bring that over there? Let's get 100. Let's get 150 scouts to the preseason blitz. Go over there, play your preseason games, and then go play NBA games. Come back here. The season's ready. You've got the publicity of it all. I think it's something that I would be excited to explore that possibility if I was the NBL. I think there could be a lot of positives out of that.
And I think that should take us with us too. Take us with them, sorry.
I could handle a trip to the US.
Now, the round finished on Sunday in the Gong, Illawarra and the Brisbane Bullets, and to me, the Brisbane Bullets looked in control of that game pretty much the whole way. They looked a pretty well drilled outfit, especially considering obviously Lamanis and Glidden and Sober have been away with the national team. They looked well drilled. Lamar Patterson, he might not look in great shape, but boy, he can deliver, and he looked terrific with what he produced without looking great physically. But I just thought the Bullets controlled that game, and there was a lot to like from their point of view.
Yeah, they got off to a slow start last year. They lost to Cairns, so it was a good win for them. Any road win you can get in this league is good. There was a lot of excitement around LaMelo's Ball's first game, so I thought he played pretty good basketball, and I think there's still some improvement there and probably some decision making from the shot taking point of view, but it was credit to Brisbane. They kind of did have mostly in control, didn't get a lot of production from their big men outside of Matty Hodgson, but their guard stepped up, which is what they built the team around.
Absolutely. Aaron Brooks, pretty solid. Probably didn't shoot the ball great, but he's clearly going to be a big numbers man this season. The Hawks, they shot 4 of 25 from 3, which is never going to get the job done, but you touched on LaMelo Ball, and that's probably, let's be honest, that's probably why the majority of the people that watched the game were watching it. His numbers were good, 12 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 steals. Some of his offensive plays were really good. Like you said, his shot selection maybe not great. He might not be a great three-point shooter right now, so he might need to put that away a little bit. But defensively is where he needs to keep improving. But he looks like he's here to do all the hard work to improve. He's not just here for a free ride.
No, I think he's got a lot. He's probably got the most upside out of everyone there, and he's probably got the most to gain by having a great season. So credit to him. You see him out on the beach working out the next day, doing some defensive slides. I don't think I ever did some defensive slides on the beach, but hey, we'll see if that helps him. He got 4 steals in game 1, so maybe he'll up that and give Damian Martin a run for his money in the Defensive Player of the Year category this year. But from the Hawks' point of view, I just like to see the ball movement a little bit more. It got stuck in LaMelo Ball's hands quite a bit, Aaron Brooks' hands quite a bit. They've got enough shooters. The way I think they're going to be able to compete is if they move the ball a little bit more, and I'm sure Matty Flynn will be working on that during the week. Absolutely.
Now, that covers round 1 for us, and we'll get on to Ben Madgen very, very shortly for our first guest on our second episode here of Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle. Now, as you can tell by the name of our show, Hoop 7, massive supporters of us, Shawn, and some terrific feedback from them last week. They were very happy with our first show, so thanks to Jason and his team for that. But, gee, if anyone wants anything in terms of basketball gear, I know that when I'm looking for Christmas presents, I'm pretty keen to, like I said last week, to deck my sister out in some Celtics gear and my girlfriend Laura in some Hornets gear, and it's really tough to not buy stuff for myself. And right now, what stands out, I don't know if you've seen their stock of Team USA gear, but they've got jackets, they've got pants, they've got shorts, they've got singlets, they've got T-shirts, all in the Team USA colours. There's Scottie Pippen, there's Larry Bird. It's pretty tough to say no to, Shawn. But once you walk into that store, it's tough to say no to a lot of things.
Yeah, I was in there over the weekend. They even got large sizes for shoes, size 15. So if you're a size 15, that's the place to go to get your basketball shoes. And yeah, there's if you're a basketball junkie like we are, place to go.
Absolutely, and I think it might even go up to size 18. So If you're a real big fella, size 18 shoes, go to Hoop 7. You can get your gear in. And this week, the NBL Perth Wildcats gear is in store as well. So for any fans heading along to the game on Friday night against the Hawks, pop in there beforehand and get your gear, and you won't be disappointed. So hoop7.com.au for all your gear, and thanks to Hoop 7 for their support. Okay, welcome back here to the show here on Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle, and our first guest for our second episode of our show is Ben Madgen. As we talked about before, back to the NBL this season with the South East Melbourne Phoenix. I think everyone's excited to have him back in the league after what we saw he was capable of at the Sydney Kings, and obviously got off to a winning start last week and looking to do the same on his home floor now this weekend. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Shawn. It's great to be on the show.
It must be great to be back in the league as well. Obviously, we missed seeing those three balls from you over the last 5 years, and you did some great things over in Europe. But I'm sure you're happy to be back home as well.
Yeah, it's looking from afar, from Europe, and seeing the league go from strength to strength, and the popularity of the league just over in Europe with all the European guys, all the American guys constantly asking me, hey, can you get me a job in the NBL? So, yeah, it was just it was great to see the league from when I came in 2010 to where it is now. It's evolved so much, and it's really, really a positive thing for the sport, because it's participated at the grassroots level. It's always been strong there, but yeah, at the pro scene, it hasn't been as strong as it could be, and I think now we're really seeing that since Larry's taken it over.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to last Thursday night, season opener, I think everyone's excited that there's a Melbourne rivalry back in the league again. That's always been a massive part of the NBL. What was that like to be part of? And obviously to come away with a win, it made it for a pretty memorable occasion for you.
Yeah, it was an awesome game to play in. The build-up was huge, so it was very emotional. We really wanted to win, and I felt like, we all kind of talked about before the game that we'd done a lot of work during the pre-season. We'd been together probably a lot longer than some of the other teams. Besides Mitch, who was away with the Aussie team, we'd all kind of been there, and some of the imports came in a bit later. But we felt like we were really prepared. The coaching staff has done a great job with us throughout the pre-season. So, going into the game, we're really pumped, ready to go. We're probably a bit overexcited at times. I think watching the game back, it was a bit scrappy, probably didn't execute as much as we wanted, but felt like we played with a lot of heart, a lot of intensity, and so many people have commented on that. It was just a great game to be in, and when it was over, we celebrated for a little bit in the change room, but it was a bit of a sense of relief for everyone involved, I think. The ownership, the office staff, all the players, coaching staff, just to be able to get that win on the board. But, being a new franchise, a lot of people say it'll take a lot of time, but if you look at our squad, we've got a lot of experience, some really good veteran leadership, along with some really good youth. So I think this mix and the way the roster's been put together has been tremendous, because it just feels like we gelled right from the start. Obviously, we can keep it going and build more chemistry together, but the people, the personalities all fit, and everyone's got the common goal of doing everything the right way, and there's no egos in the team. So I think it's all set up to be successful, and I don't feel like it's going to have those big teething problems that maybe some of the new franchises have had in the past.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't look like it at this stage. When we go back, well, it must be 6 months now at least, when you made the decision to sign with the Phoenix. At that point, were you always coming home, and were you just looking to decide which NBL club to come to, or was it the fact that whatever Tommy Greer sold you on made the decision for you to come home at that point, or how did it come about that you ended up signing?
Yeah, well, I definitely hadn't decided on coming home. My wife would have liked to because we went over just the both of us, and we came back with 2 kids as well. So that was a big part of it. But I was still willing to play over in Europe. I'd built up like a pretty good reputation there, been playing Euro Cup, and still had some good offers on the table there, although I signed early in the NBL. But I've been talking to Tommy actually for a couple of years, along with some other teams, especially the Kings, about coming home. And Tommy actually told me, I've been kind of setting this up for a long time, for it to finally, him to be in the GM role to bring me back. So some great conversations with Tommy and also Simon, and I just really liked the way they were building it. Obviously with Mitch signing, and I was talking to them, to South East Melbourne around the same time, and it just really felt right. I talked to my wife Bria and family and friends, and we just really felt like it was a great time to come home, and a great opportunity, and I haven't had one regret about doing it.
You touched on it a little bit before as well, but from the league that you left at the end of that 2013 season to the league that you're returning to now, it's almost unrecognisable. Yeah,
I think I left 15-16.
Yeah, sorry,
But yeah, I was telling someone actually today that when I came in 2010 to now, we have our own facility at the State Sports Centre that's, booked out every day for us. We have our own players' room and even our own chef that cooks us breakfast and lunch. I mean, if you told me that when I signed with Sydney in 2010 when we were training out at Macquarie University, I would have probably told you crazy. So it's really, it's so good to be a part of now. It's so professional. And I think a lot of people had the right idea back when I first started, but there just wasn't the funding and, the commercial kind of interest that there is now. And I think, it can only get better, especially if the NBL were to sign, that big TV rights deal that the other sports like AFL and NRL have. And I think, that's the next step. And if we have that, then it will really, I think, boom into maybe even the powerhouse sport in the country.
This chef you talked about, it got a bit of attention after Mitch mentioned it on the broadcast after the game last Thursday. What can you tell me? I think it caught a lot of people by surprise that an NBL club has their own chef at the moment.
Yeah, his name's Angelo, and he's the biggest legend. I was just telling him today that you've been here for about 4 or 5 months and we still haven't had the same meal twice. Wow. So he's fantastic. He's actually opening up his own restaurant, but he's worked all over the world in New York. And, he's just such a good chef. And he's not just a chef, but we also talk to him a lot about other things like diet. At the moment, I'm on I'm trying to eat my meals within 10 hours in the day, which is something I hadn't heard of really until I talked to Angelo about it. And just tweaking little things here and there. Some guys have meal plans with him. He cooks them the meals and they take them home. He's just he's great there. He's great to be around. He's very accessible, and he's really helping us with our nutrition. At least, some of the guys that probably don't cook a lot for themselves, they're having 2 really good cooked meals a day. And then they just need a prepared dinner, or like I said, Angelo will hook them up with that too. So, it's fantastic. I think Eric Hollingsworth has set up a lot of good stuff for us off the court. So that's been a real bonus.
You had a really good run with the Kings personally. Probably didn't quite have the team success you were hoping for. And probably in a lot of ways it would have been the easy decision to stay in the league when you decided to leave. But when you look back now, are you proud that you challenged yourself to go and play in Europe and you ended up having 4 really good years over there?
Yeah, that's a very good question because that's exactly why I did it. I actually opted out of my deal at Sydney after dislocating my shoulder and having a reconstruction. So when I opted out of my deal, I couldn't lift my arm above my waist, and I told my wife, we could really regret this. And she was actually the one that really pushed me. She said, you've been aiming to do this for a long time. I believe that you can get your arm right. And even when I first went to Belgium, my arm wasn't 100%, but I made it work. And after, a month, it felt great. It was back to normal. But yeah, I think if I finished my career and I just stayed in the NBL, I would have lived in regret about what could have been. I had a dream of playing Euro Cup. And even after my first year of leading the scoring in Belgium, the league in scoring, I said, that's it, I'm playing Euro Cup this year. That was my kind of showcase year. And then it took right until the end of kind of free agency period to sign a deal. And that was quite stressful. My wife and I were going from Airbnb in Amsterdam every week because I'm like, we're not getting longer than a week because it's a bad omen. Yeah. She was 7 months pregnant at the time. Wow. And but yeah, she's been fantastic through the whole thing. And then, signed for a Euro Cup team and playing in that competition against, the best players in the world, Alexi Shved at Kimki and Bayern Munich and all these teams, and traveling all over Europe for a couple of years. It was just really, I soaked it all in and was able to play at a high level, which I think for myself to know that I could play at that really elite level. One day when I retire and I look back, I'll be like, wow, that was an incredible journey. And one thing that I'm very proud about, it was, having a dream and, people saying that, that's above you, or I don't think you could play at that level. And then being able to back myself and sign that contract, play in Euro Cup for a couple of seasons and played really well and have a successful team, I think, it all made it worth it. And, I definitely won't have any regrets when I finish my basketball career now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a great credit to you that you actually, like you said, you backed yourself to give it a shot when it might have been easier to do otherwise. When you come back home now, like you said, you've got your 2 kids now. Life's obviously very different than it was 4 years ago. Can you just talk us through what's it like, coming home and getting to be a father, I guess, now rather than just being... I guess it takes a lot of the pressure off just worrying about what's happening on the basketball court.
Yeah, it is. It's surreal because being a dad is the best thing in the world. My 2 boys are amazing. When you lose a game, especially the high pressures of Europe where it's very emotional, it's like, your mum died every time you lose a game. To come home or to see my son, he runs out onto the court and gives me a big hug and, you instantly forget about the game. But, I think, life evolves and now, as much as my wife and I would like to go on a few more dates and have a bit more time together, our world is our kids and our family and, we love it. And especially being here in Melbourne in Q East, it's a fantastic little area for families, lots of parks and, life slowed down and I'm really enjoying it all. Besides, sometimes the sleepless nights, but I think once you get used to the sleep deprivation a little bit, it's fantastic. And my son is addicted to the eldest son. He's 3 this month. He's addicted to basketball, and he plays all day, every day on his little hoop. So he's pretty good, little left-hander. Shoots jump shots and dribbles now and everything. So. Yeah, maybe he'll be a little baller in the future.
Yeah, no, you never know. One former teammate of yours at Sydney I need to ask about is Luke Cooper. Anytime your name's mentioned, he's very quick to have a jab or 2 your way. I thought I'd give you this chance. Have you got something you'd like to say back to him on the record?
Well, he's got the old Napoleon syndrome because he's quite short and quite angry. But no, me and Coops go way back and we always have great banter. For people on Twitter that might not be familiar and they think, they must have some beef or something. No, it's all love. We get along really well and, I really enjoy playing with him for a couple of seasons and he's a great guy. And he's also just recently had a kid too, so a little boy. So maybe they'll grow up giving each other banter like we do all the time too.
Now, obviously, I'm doing this podcast with Shawn Redhage, as you know, but he hasn't been able to join us because of a bit of a hiccup, which was not really either of our faults early in the day. Given what was never a lot of fun to play against, and you didn't have a lot of success against him when you're in Sydney, were you in a way relieved that you managed to avoid having to talk to him?
Well, yeah, Shawn's one of those guys that I think you hate playing against, but he's one of the guys that you'd love to have on your team. His record, win-loss record and success he had there at Perth speaks for itself. And he was just a fantastic player, a nightmare matchup because, at the 4 he could take guys off the dribble, he could shoot. So you didn't know whether to switch to pick and roll or what you're going to do with him. But he had a great career. We cheap shot at each other a few times, I'm sure. And I think he's got that same kind of white line fever as myself.
Yep.
One of those guys off the court who's super chilled, but people come up to me all the time like, man, you're actually a real nice guy and chilled out off the court because people just see you on the court, the fiery nature. So there's a lot of guys like that and characters that are great for the league. I've only got a full respect for Shawn for what he did throughout his career, and everyone that played for him said he was a great teammate too. So I'm a bit disappointed I don't get to speak to him actually.
That's right. We'll try to arrange you to catch up when you're over in Perth next.
Fantastic.
Just finally, this Sunday, first home game for the club against the Brisbane Bullets. How excited are you to get out there for that?
Yeah, super pumped. They've got some really good players, especially some great guard play, which will be a good challenge. But, we've got John and myself, Kyle, Gibbo will hopefully be back from his little calf injury. And I think it's going to be a fantastic matchup. And, it's really important for us this first couple of months of the season because I think we have 7 or 8 out of our first 10 in Melbourne.
Yep.
And then we have a bit of a horror stretch out in February with a lot of away games. So we're really trying to get off to a good start. And that's one of the reasons why we didn't go to to an NBA game this year because of that fatigue factor. So we've got to make the most of it, and we know that they're a really good team. We played them in the pre-season, but they were missing a few players, and obviously Andre was away. Yep. But yeah, we're excited about playing, especially give our fans another taste because some of the members wouldn't have been able to go to the last game because it was sold out. So we feel like we've got great support here in Melbourne already. And we're just going to try and keep building and keep playing hard and leave it all out on the court.
Perfect. Thanks very much for joining us. This is just our second episode, so we're still very new into it, but we were very excited to get the chance to have a chat to you, Ben, and great to see you back in the league. And, yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks a lot, mate.
Now, Shawn, now that we've heard my chat with Ben Madgen, and thanks again to Ben for taking the time out to do that with us, it's time for your chat with a former championship teammate of yours from 2014, Drake Yu, who it's fair to say he probably ended his playing career prematurely. He spent just a couple of seasons at the Wildcats, and he still had a contract, but he actually got a better offer. So he took up a job back at his hometown Sacramento Kings as a manager of player development, and then he moved into an assistant general manager role with the Stockton Kings, who is obviously Sacramento's G League affiliate, which is a role he's in now, and he's also performing as a professional scout. And recently he was at the NBL Blitz having a look at LaMelo Ball and RJ Hampton very closely. So yeah, it's been a fascinating career for the Sacramento native already. He's very happy back home in Sacramento, but as you know, he certainly enjoyed his time here in Perth. So let's get into your chat with him as two former championship teammates reconnected.
I'm here with Drake Yu, former Perth Wildcat championship player back in 2014, now with the Sacramento Kings. How are you, Drake? Thanks for joining us.
I'm great, Shawn. Thanks for having me, bro.
So just get into your story. You were with the Perth Wildcats for a couple of years, won a championship, and then eventually ended up with the Sacramento Kings. Can you tell us how you got to that point?
Yeah. So I was back home summer of 2015. Obviously had opted out of returning to Perth, and was just kind of home working out, trying to figure out, what my next move was going to be. And the been speaking with my agent, and an opportunity with Cairns had come about. So it was pretty close to, finalizing that. And early in August, got a call from a mutual friend with Vlade Divac, who at the time had just been named general manager of Sacramento Kings, and had mentioned the position opening up and asked if I, could come in the next day to interview for a position. So came in and met with Vlade, which still to this day is like surreal to me because, he sat down, told me about the position. And like for anyone who's ever met Vlade, like he is, here I went into it like pretty nervous and not really sure what to expect, but like Vlade is the most like genuine, humble, like super approachable human being that what you see on TV and what you hear is really, who Vlade is. And so he made it very conversational and was telling me about it. And, I remember telling him at the time, I grew up in Sacramento, and during, the time where the Kings were kind of going through some championship runs. And so those great teams with, Vlade and C. Webb and Mike Bibby, Doug Christie, Bobby Jackson, Peja, these are guys that I grew up, watching nightly. And I told him, I'm like, it's crazy because, guys like him are what I feel fueled my passion for the game as a young boy. And so it just kind of came full circle and talking with him. And when he mentioned the player development position, it was for like a kind of a dual role where I'm on and off the court working with players. And, the opportunity sounded pretty cool. The NBA front office was something that I had always been interested in as far as what I wanted to do when I was done playing. And so this opportunity sounded really cool. So after I finished meeting with them for about an hour and a half, they told me that the job was going to post in about a month and they'd get back to me. And again, I was actually planning on signing with Cairns and, leaving for Australia in the next week or two. And so I actually reached back out to Vlade and let him know kind of my situation, and I wanted to kind of see this opportunity through before making a decision. And so out of nowhere, I ended up getting the offer letter that night. And so as far as timing for me and my family being in Sacramento and understanding how it's really hard to get a foot in the NBA door. And so just kind of prayed about it and, talked it through with my family and just decided that this was definitely a new challenge for me and an opportunity to start a new career. And so, it's not often you can stay around basketball and do what you love on a daily basis. So I called my agent, Daniel, at the time, Daniel Moldovan, and kind of let him know what was going down and the decision I was going to make. And he fully supported me. And so, that was summer of 2015. And it's crazy. Fast forward, it's been 4 years now going into year 5 for me. So that was kind of my story as far as how I got started with the Kings.
So I'm assuming you got the job there, and so you didn't mention Robert Horry's name when you went for your interview.
There's just certain people you just don't even bring up in Sacramento, and Robert and Kobe and Shaq are at the top. Robert's probably at the top, you're right. So I actually wanted the job, so I wasn't.
For our listeners that don't know who Robert Horry is, just YouTube his shot versus the Sacramento Kings. You know what we're talking about. So what's your current role now? I know you've had a few different kind of roles with the Sacramento Kings. What's your current role within the organization?
So currently I help run our G League team. It's based in Stockton. Kind of manage the day-to-day on that end. The day-to-day operation, roster composition, different transactions, scouting. And then on the King side, I kind of go back and forth. On the King side, I just do a lot of like our West Coast college scouting. So I pretty much go throughout the region and kind of own those schools as far as, really understanding where our focus list is at and target players and a lot of like more so the personnel side of for the Sacramento side. So basically a combination of like running the G League and being with them, and then supplementing that with a lot of college and G League scouting.
And I understand you were just currently, recently, I would say, in Australia doing some scouting on the NBL. Can you tell us about that, and who are you looking at?
Yeah, definitely. 2 weeks prior to the Blitz, our scouting director reached out and mentioned that, a lot of teams are actually going to be sending scouts to Australia to go watch the Blitz. And, me having played in the NBL and having teammates that were still playing and coaches and just having different contacts over there, he had asked if I'd be interested in going. So I jumped on it, and, it was an opportunity to get an early look at two of the young kids that are in the Next Stars program in the NBL. That was a great trip. It was a good chance for me to kind of, catch up with some old mates and coaches, and obviously get an early look at some of these young, talented kids. So I think it's great for the league. I think it's, a couple guys have, gone this route in the past, and Terrence Ferguson and Brian Bowen. And so I think it's great that, to get like two guys that are projected potential lottery picks playing in the NBL on a nightly basis, I think is great for them. And I also think it's great for the league and global basketball altogether. So, that was a great chance to, get back to Australia and the Down Under, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I just go back and think about myself as an 18-year-old coming out and playing the NBL. I think there's no way they would even come close to putting up some of the numbers that these guys are doing. So it really is impressive. I'm excited to see what they do during the regular season as well. And do you think this is going to become more of a mainstream option for some of these high school kids? Obviously, there's talk over in the U.S. about college players and trying to change the compensation route there, and even in California, there was some big news there the last couple of weeks. But do you see this as a pretty viable option for a lot of kids now if they have that opportunity?
Absolutely. I think that like Australia is a legitimate, it's a legitimate league. I think it's an underrated league. And I think about like the transition for some of these kids that like not to go to college. I mean, what better place to spend a winter, an American winter, than being near a beach, being able to like learn how to become a pro a year ahead of a college freshman. English speaking, awesome culture. There's a lot of professionalism that goes into the NBL clubs. They're very professional. And so everything from like off the court appearances to, treatment and recovery, to the weight room, to on-court development and teaching of the game. I think that like they have a legitimate way of developing young players. And, on top of that, to be able to actually be paid for, their skill, I think is like a very intriguing path. And so I think it's very new. And to me, it's like really exciting. It'll be interesting to see how, the year plays out, and, how guys like Bowen and Terrence is now in his third year, I believe, who's, already starting to show steps. Like people have done it. I mean, me and you play with James, like guys have, Torrey Craig, like guys have actually had a lot of success coming out of the NBL and transitioning and translating to the NBA. And so I think it's only gotten more popular, and I wouldn't be surprised if, depending on how LaMelo and RJ finish the year, if it continues to be a legitimate route. I mean, and Didi is also a really impressive player in his own right. So the league has really been bolstered by this young talent. I think it's only, going to help the NBL brand, which I think is great.
Yeah, and you've got NBL games playing NBA teams as well. You've got Melbourne United coming up to play the Sacramento Kings. Who are you tipping in that one?
No comment.
No, it should be. I think it's awesome as well, just for the league. These guys, the teams coming over and playing the NBA. There's just so many great things that the league is doing from an exposure point of view, and you're starting to see that 27 scouts. I think there was 100 scouts watching R.J. Hampton train the other day before they played the Utah Jazz as well. So it's exciting. Memphis Grizzlies. It's exciting time for the league and how it's viewed on a global scale as well. And just go back to your time, I guess, what you took from your time with the Perth Wildcats and how and I guess what are the fond memories you have of that time?
You know what? When I got to the NBA, and then looking back at Perth, Perth, it was so I have very fond memories of Perth. Obviously the friends that I've made with my teammates there, the brotherhood. I think that there's a lot of qualities that are translatable to successful NBA teams. So when I think of Perth, I almost honestly felt like it was ran very Spurs-like as far as always striving to be best in class on and off the court. There's an accountability there's a culture of accountability. I think that they not only recruit talent, but they recruit the person. And these are all things that I think now Vladi and Peja have been able to implement here, and that's how we've been able to kind of turn things around in Sacramento. It's really it's not a big secret as far as how what makes successful teams, and so I think back to Perth, the professionalism, the us having Perth I know Jack went out of his way to provide any resource that we needed as players, and I'll just always remember those, especially that first year, winning a championship, starting off the year 7-0, and just I'll never forget the fork and knife game. Actually, the fork and knife game is probably one of my favorite memories because that's one of my party tricks now with all my American friends. And they crack up when I tell them, I kid you not, it took me an entire year to understand the pattern behind this. So shout out to Jesse Wagstaff, you, Shawn, you guys literally you guys got me all year. So these are just fun, the team dinners and all the off-court bonding that we did, and it was never forced. We always just did it because we enjoyed each other's company, and I think that that's what made us such a great team. And the appearances that we did and getting involved with the community, and just the amount of the love from the Red Army, that fan base is just incredible to me. And I always remember those Perth days. So
the ninth and fourth game will live in infamy, and I think that you were one of the best ones, and for any future recruits, don't give it away. It's a rite of passage when you come to the Perth Wildcats and you're on your first trip away at dinner time. Just talking about the Sacramento
Jimmy
team.
got it before me.
Does that still upset you?
Yeah.
Are you trying to? Do you get to talk to James Ennis much? Obviously he's on the other side of the country, but do you get to see him when he comes to town and is playing the Sacramento Kings these days?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's cool every time. obviously sometimes I'm gone when the teams are coming to Sacramento and playing here. So I think we've actually missed each other maybe the last 2 times, but, every chance we get to catch up and we're in the same town, like we'll grab food and, catch up, and it's like we pick right back up where we left off. So it's just been fun to watch James. We both know the amount of work that he put in that year we were with him, and now he's a legitimate NBA vet, and I couldn't be more happy and proud for him. It's been pretty cool watching the success. So, yeah, we catch up and stay in touch through text. So it's pretty cool.
Tell people, they ask me who the best player I've played with, and I give them, for a long time I said James Ennis, and now for me it's a toss-up between James Ennis and Bryce Cotton. So those 2 guys are just incredible talents. Do you see Bryce Cotton on NBA teams' radar at all? Yeah, Bryce is obviously had a lot of success in the NBL. The word of mouth that I get in the NBA, people rave about him here, and I know, he had a good amount of time in Utah. I wouldn't be surprised if he got another chance at all. I think that he's still proven to be a very productive player, and not only productive, but a winner. And so, I think that he's still young enough, and sometimes guys go away for a couple of years and they end up, popping back up on an NBA radar, and teams are looking for kind of a guy that they can rely on, that's not a rookie, that's, had a lot of overseas experience and is a mature player. And so, I feel like that window can still be open for him, or I wouldn't be surprised. So, again, a lot of good talent in the NBL. So it's been fun to see. And what's the outlook for the Sacramento Kings this year? You guys have got a young ball club. You made some changes. Got Luke Walton coming in as your coach. What's the outlook for your team this year?
I think we're obviously made some changes. I think we're still a young team that is just trying to get better than last year. I think that this summer we went out and added a lot of veteran leadership and guys that can come in our second unit. And I think we really added to our depth, which was an issue for us last year at times. And so, adding guys that have won, like Trevor Ariza and Corey Joseph, particularly the backup point guard position, adding some athleticism and rim running and shot blocking with a guy like Rashawn Holmes, and then so adding good vet pieces, and then also allowing our young guys to continue to grow, guys like De'Aaron and Buddy, re-signing Harrison Barnes, and getting him to stay for the next couple of years. Another veteran leader who's, won championships. And then, obviously hoping that Marvin had a really good summer, and hopefully he can take that next step with more opportunity this season. So, we added a lot of depth, but not, sacrificing the growth of our young players. So hopefully those guys can continue to mesh well. And, I think that the beauty of Vlade and Peja are so in tune with the importance of building team chemistry and building a true team that is sustainable over the next couple of years, not just trying to, have a short-minded mindset when trying to win now. I think that we're thinking, not only for the next year or two, but the next 5 to 10 years, trying to build that young core, and then continue to just, through the draft and through, trade acquisitions, just adding pieces that can ultimately win a championship. So I think, very fortunate to get a guy like Luke in here too, who Luke played at a high level. Players, he has that respect from a lot of players, and he has a great way of communicating. And with these young players today, communication is just so important, and a relationship with players is so important. So he got hired shortly after season, and he's had a couple months now to really build relationships with a lot of these young guys, and I think that that's really going to pay off for us hopefully, in the next couple of years. So I'm really excited. I'm optimistic. Obviously, like, Sacramento is dying for, a spot in the playoffs. The West just is like it just keeps getting harder every year. But, for us, I think we're thinking long term and trying to really just try and keep getting better every day and building confidence as a unit and kind of going from there. So,
well, it might be easier to beat your close rivals in the Golden State Warriors. They've lost a few pieces this year, so we wish you all the best this year. I'm going to be looking at the Sacramento Kings and hoping that you guys have a fantastic year. And thanks for your time today. It's been awesome for me to catch up with one of my favorite teammates, and credit to you to where you're at today and taking, going from being a college graduate, come out here to Australia, experience something new, and now you're sitting in the NBA and watching NBA games on a nightly basis within that organization is awesome for you. Proud of you. And thanks for taking the time with us today, Drake.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate you, Shawn. Shawn, you, real quick before I leave, I will always remember, like, when you asked about what I remember, I think, like, the NBL is great because of players like you, as far as, like, I always remember you being, like, that one vet who I would always look up to, and, like, your professionalism, the way that you handled yourself, you having played at that point when I went over there, you'd already played in the league like 15 or 20 years. So I was like, what do I need to do to play as long as Shawn Redhage, the scoring machine? And I think that, like, that to me is one of the most underrated parts of the league, because guys like LaMelo and guys like RJ and, these young players that come over, for them to have examples like you, I think is like a really strong, I mean, it's the same way in the NBA. Like, they're going to have vets in the NBA locker room. And I think that, like, when I think of you, Shawn, I think of, that, like, Tim Duncan, like, figure in an NBA locker room. It's like, okay, like, this is how you do it, young fella. Like, come get shots in with me every day. Like, those are things that I'll always remember from my playing career. And granted, I didn't get a chance to play in the NBA, but, like, you are that veteran figure in the locker room and, like, leader, and you can back it up with your play. But, like, I appreciate you having me on, man. It's been fun catching up. Not to toot your horn too much, but, like, also one of my favorite teammates, man. So,
no, thanks for that, Drake. Anytime you throw Tim Duncan out there, you got my ears listening. So I appreciate that.
Same athleticism.
Yes, not a lot of dunks, just fundamental, right?
Hey,
It's been great to catch up with you, and we'll be looking for the Sacramento Kings, and hopefully next time you come out to Australia, you make it a little bit farther west and we can catch up in person.
Sounds good, man. Tell your family hi.
Now, Shawn, round two. We're into the second week of the season already. Gets underway with a doubleheader Friday night. Brisbane Bullets, their first game on their home floor for the season. And they're up against the Cairns Taipans, obviously. As you touched on before, that was a good way for the Taipans to start their season last year with a win in Brisbane before things fell off the rails a little bit with a 14-game losing streak. But Brisbane looked good last week. What are your thoughts on this game to open the round?
Well, Brisbane, they want to get off to a good start. Obviously, Cairns is going to be desperate for a win. Cairns had their number last year, beating them 3 out of 4 times. So I'll be interested to see if Brisbane can make adjustments with that, and if Cairns can find a closer as well. So Brisbane going into a new stadium, so we'll see how they respond to their new home. I think sounds like it'll be a little bit more potent than the library of the Brisbane Entertainment Center. So let's hope that they get a strong home court presence in game one.
Yeah, let's hope so, because they're a good team and they look like they're well and truly a finals contender. Second game Friday night, RSC Arena, Perth Wildcats, Illawarra Hawks. There's been some horror showings there for the Hawks over the years, but they've got a new coach now, Matty Flynn, a very young team, so there's not too many guys with scars there. How do you think they'll go coming into the jungle?
Well, they've lost 31 of their last 32 overall in the West, so it's not looking great for Illawarra. And you see, they've got some new players as well. Can Aaron Brooks bring that? I kind of feel like you really need someone to step up, have 30 or 40 points to get a win over the Wildcats. here in the West. So it's Aaron Brooks could be that type of guy that really can go off, and although he's going to have a guy named Damian Martin guarding him. So it's, Perth's going to want to try and get a lot of wins early on because they got 4 out of the first 5 at home. So it's they're going to be motivated to play better than they did against Melbourne United. So I expect Perth Wildcats to get one. That one I expect Brisbane to beat Cairns.
I expect Damien to spend most of the time guarding Aaron Brooks, but how do you think someone like LaMelo Ball will cope having Damian Martin in his face? He wouldn't have experienced anything like that in his life just yet.
It will be interesting to see how he goes. He played well in the preseason against Damian Martin. I think it actually kind of plays into LaMelo Ball's hands at the moment, because I think when you pressure him, he is so quick that he can get around. Damian Martin likes to pressure and try and force you into bad decisions and that type of thing. I think if I'm guarding LaMelo Ball, I'm going to stand off in the keyway and make him shoot. He hasn't hit a 3 yet. Yep. He's got to prove that he can hit that because he's dynamic attacking the basket. So I'll be interested to see how they scout and play him in that regard as well.
With Wildcats, your tip?
Wildcats is my tip.
Saturday, Sydney Kings, Adelaide 36ers. Kings obviously started with a good win last week up in Cairns. Adelaide coming off a bit of a shellacking from the Utah Jazz over in the United States. So this is their first crack to start the season, and gee, for Jerome Randall to come back to the Adelaide 36ers and for his first game to be against the Sydney Kings, and Kevin Lish and Casper Ware there waiting for him. It's a pretty salivating prospect.
Yeah, that to me, that's the most intriguing game of the round with Sydney and Adelaide. How is Adelaide going to respond? A 50-point loss to the Utah Jazz. Obviously, the Wildcats lost by 50 last year in the preseason, responded pretty well against the Denver Nuggets, and then heading into the NBL season, winning 10 quick games early on out of their first 11. So it's going to be interesting to see how Jerome Randall handles going back to Sydney. I didn't think Sydney looked great in their first game, so they're trying to fit in all their pieces. And we know Adelaide's had a lot of success against Sydney in recent times as well. So Adelaide's kind of been Sydney's bogey team. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. But I do expect Sydney to get over the line. But I think it'll be closer than people think.
Next up on Sunday, two informed teams. We've got the South East Melbourne Phoenix coming off their good start against Melbourne last week and playing a Brisbane team who would have already played on Friday night as well. So an interesting one on the road for the Bullets, having played 2 nights earlier. But yeah, it's probably a tough game to call because both teams look pretty good in the opening round.
They did, but I think Ty Wesley missing for South East Melbourne. I'm not sure Mitch Creek is going to bring 28 points and 4 or 5 from the 3-point line on a weekly basis, but credit to him, he played fantastic in that game 1. But I do think Brisbane playing their second game, traveling, is going to be tough, and I think Southeast Melbourne's going to be playing with a lot of emotion, being their first home game ever for a new franchise. So I'm picking Southeast Melbourne Phoenix to get that one.
Round concludes then on Monday night. Illawarra Hawks and the Cairns Taipans, 2 teams who, depending on how they go earlier in the round, might be pretty desperate for a win. 2 teams that are trying to climb the ladder this season. It's an interesting game because you wouldn't want to be on the losing end of this one, I don't think.
Well, you could look at both those teams being 0-2 going into that game, so you do not want to be 0-3. There'll be a lot of desperation in that one. I feel like Illawarra will get that one because they've they played okay in the game 1, and they're coming off a tough travel schedule to Perth, but being at home, I think they'll get that one over Cairns, especially with Cairns having to back up and play their second game on the weekend as well. So I'm picking Illawarra in that one, but that one could go either way, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, if you noticed last week, you can check out social media for our tips, and we'll keep track of those throughout the season and potentially make something of that in terms of getting a bit of a sponsorship on board. They can follow our tips throughout the season, and of course anyone that listening can send through their tips as well, and we can keep track of those. And
what was our record last week, Pikey?
I reckon we did pretty well. We certainly got the Phoenix first up. We both went for the Phoenix. We both got the Kings on Friday. We both got the Wildcats, and I think we both got the Bullets. I think we're 4-0.
4-0. So I'm not saying if you want to follow us, we could help you with your picks in the NBL on a weekly basis. 4-0, pretty good start.
Absolutely. Let's hope we're 9-0 by next week when we're back again. So, Shawn, just before we finish, what are you most excited about seeing this weekend?
Look, I think there's a lot of intriguing matchups, but for me, Jerome Randall, how is he going to handle going back to Sydney? I just feel like he's a perfect fit for Adelaide, and I think he's going to be excited to get back there in Sydney and how he handles that. And, he's going to be the barometer for how well this Adelaide 36ers, are they going to be able to compete for that top 4 spot? So I'm excited to see his go up against his former teammates and go up against Casper Ware as well.
Yeah, it'll be fantastic. And, plenty more to look forward to as well. And let's hope that you've enjoyed our second episode here of Hoops Heaven's Basketball Hustle. We've certainly enjoyed bringing it to you. Thanks to Hoops Heaven for helping us bring it to you. Thanks to our guests for making it what was hopefully an enjoyable show. And let's hope we can do it all again next week.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Have a great time.